even U.S. citizens can now be dragged away without a trial. This is absolutely wild. And a lot of this, I believe, tracks back to the Laken Riley Act. The Laken Riley Act, you will recall, was passed with the help of 42 members of the House of Representatives, Democrats, and 12, as I recall, Democratic, maybe 14 Democratic members of the United States Senate. And what it says is that ICE, it empowers, the Immigration Customs Enforcement, it empowers ICE to arrest people on U.S. soil if they suspect that that person may be here illegally. Now, they don't need any proof. And according to ICE, they can deport people without any proof, which is exactly what happened last week to roughly 250 Venezuelan nationals, or alleged Venezuelan. We don't even know. We have no idea how many of these people might be U.S. citizens, how many of them might be Mexicans, how many of them might be Venezuelans. It appears that so far, none of them have been convicted of any crimes. In fact, the White House came out and said, well, they've been in the country a short time. See, these are, and therefore they haven't had time to commit crimes. This is like Minority Report, right? The old Tom Cruise movie where we're gonna arrest people before they commit a crime to prevent them from committing the crime. I mean, this is just nuts. And I mean, it's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. It's a violation of the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or at least those parts of the Bill of Rights. And, Thom Hartmann says, I don't care what judges say. The judges are pushing back, but no judge yet so far has had the courage to hold a Trump lawyer, an administration lawyer, in contempt. And, they have the power to do that. We'll get into that a little later, and as I mentioned a couple of days ago, but this is crazy what's going on. A U.S. citizen from Chicago was among 22 people who were arrested and detained by ICE last week. The U.S. Government Accountability Office found that during Trump's first term, an estimated 600 U.S. citizens were arrested and an estimated 70 U.S. citizens were deported. But this Laken Riley Act has put this on steroids. Here's a couple of stories. Fabian Schmidt, a German-born engineer, has lived in the United States for nearly 2 decades, legally working, paying taxes, and contributing to his community. The guy's got a green card, right? None of that mattered when he returned home from a trip abroad. As soon as he landed at Logan Airport in Boston, ICE agents pulled him aside. His green card renewal was flagged for some unknown reason. No explanation, no opportunity to clarify, just a red mark in a government system. That was all it took. ICE stripped him of his clothes, subjected him to hours of aggressive questioning, locked him in a detention center, threw him into an ice-cold shower, left him shivering on the concrete floor, naked, humiliated, and terrified. For days, his mother, Astrid, desperately tried to find him. Keep in mind, this is a guy who's lived in the country for 20 years, legally, is still living here legally. She called ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and any agency that might give her an answer. They all ignored her or outright lied to her, claiming they had no record of her son. When she finally learned where he was, he said, they treat us like animals. He was barely holding it together. And why? Well, they later said, it was a bureaucratic error. Yeah, right. Jessica Brosche, a German tattoo artist visiting the United States. She had a return ticket. She had a legal permission. She had the visa under the visa waiver program. She had a valid German passport. But ICE decided that she just might try to work while visiting under the Laken Riley Act. Suspicion is enough. Once inside, the nightmare deepened. They threw her into a cell with no bed and no access to legal assistance. For 8 straight days, they kept her in solitary confinement. The lights never dimmed, and the sounds of other detainees screaming in despair echoed through the walls. This is one of these for-profit prisons that Trump loves, that Republicans love, because they kick back, massive campaign contributions to Republicans. She started hallucinating, her grip on reality slipping, desperate to feel something, anything real. She punched the walls until her knuckles bled. Meanwhile, her best friend Amelia was frantically searching for her. ICE refused to confirm her location or even acknowledge that she existed. No charges, no trial, no legal recourse, just silence. Consider Jasmine Mooney. She's a Canadian actor who starred in the American Pie series. She's a Canadian businesswoman who always played by the rules. She secured a job offer in California, completed all the visa paperwork, followed every U.S. immigration law to the letter. But that didn't stop ICE from shackling her, chaining her wrists, ankles, and waist as if she was a violent offender. For days, she was trapped in a brutal private for-profit detention facility, laying on the bare floor with nothing but a crinkled foil sheet for warmth. Then in the dead of night, ICE dragged her from her cell, bound her in chains again, and forced her onto a bus with dozens of other women. They drove for hours, denying them food, water, or bathroom breaks. By the time she arrived at another private for-profit facility, she'd been awake for 24 hours, was too weak to stand. To this day, ICE won't explain why she was detained. She tells her horrifying story to The Guardian today. You can read it at theguardian.com. She said, I was placed in a real jail unit, 2 levels of cells surrounding a common area, just like in the movies. I was put in a tiny cell alone with a bunk and a toilet. There were around 140 of us in our unit. Many women had lived and worked in the U.S. legally for years, but had overstayed their visas, often after reapplying and then being denied. They had all been detained without warning. This is the bottom line. ICE agents don't need proof. They only need the power to act, and Trump has given it to them. I mean, you know, Canadians, Germans, I mean, we've done this now to Canadian citizens, to Germans. They're starting to freak out. The tourism business in this country is collapsing. ProPublica documented yesterday how a 21-year-old U.S. citizen born in Philadelphia was dragged off to detention, how a 10-year-old American citizen girl was deported, interrupting her chemo for brain cancer. An estimated 600 U.S. citizens detained during Trump's first term. Mistaken? No. ICE has become the protection squad. The German word for protection squad is Schutzstaffel. If that's familiar to you, it's typically abbreviated by by 2 letters SS. The protection squad. And, you know, they've been given this just basically unlimited power. And now, you know, they've sent these people down to El Salvador in defiance of a federal judge. Marco Rubio retweets, a tweet that says, oopsie, too late. I mean, a president who can deport anyone, even in violation of a judge's order, can also arrest anyone. ISIS, they did this here in Portland back, 5 years ago. They were driving around in vans with no markings on them, out of uniform, no markings on them as individuals, literally kidnapping people off the streets of Portland, beating them up or terrorizing them and then just dumping them in other places as ways to disrupt protesters. Are they going to start doing this again? I think if protests really get to be a big thing, they will. A judge stopped Trump from doing that back in 2005. If he does it today, the question isn't who the ICE protection squads and other federal police agencies will target next. It's who will be left to stop them.